Thanks very much, Aaron, for sticking within the time limit as well. It was amazing. So now, making things a bit more local, I'd like to hand over to Roxanne Mashari, who's a Labour councillor, who, as Aaron said, moved the emergency motion on the climate emergency motion for Brent Council.
Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks to everyone who's helped bring this event together today, which is, I think, the first in Brent that I've seen to talk about green jobs. As Ian said, I'm a local councillor. I'm a councillor in the wards that I grew up in Welsh Harp. I've also held both the environment brief on Brent Council Cabinet and the regeneration and business brief. So I'm really interested in how those two agendas fit together. I set up the Brent chapter of Extinction Rebellion, and we've got members of local Extinction Rebellion here today. And my day job is also advising the Shadow DEFRA Minister. So yes, I'd like to give myself a lot of work. So I've been asked to speak tonight about three things mainly: the current economic challenges and opportunities in Brent, local levers and points of influence, where we might be able to get climate change and the environment much more on the agenda, and suggest a menu of options for taking our ideas and taking them forward from this meeting tonight. So the current economic picture in Brent is probably not news to everyone here that we have quite a lot of unemployment, a lot of economically inactive people in Brent, higher than both the London and national average. Weekly pay in Brent is on average £100 lower than the average weekly salary across London. Our local job density is lower than the London average, so that's the ratio of total jobs to population. And we have some of the highest child poverty rates in the country. Stonebridge ward that we're in this evening has almost 50% of children growing up in poverty. So, you know, we are up against it. We know that poverty, worklessness, underemployment are big issues in Brent. The good news is that the percentage of people in Brent with NVQ4 qualifications and above is quite high. It's higher than the national average. We have the largest industrial estate in Northern Europe in Park Royal, which is, I always think quite ironically, is right next to Stonebridge, where we have the highest unemployment. But we do have the largest industrial estate in Northern Europe in Brent. We have some key landmarks like Wembley Stadium, the Eastern Temple, and we also have more circular economy jobs in northwest London than in any other part of the city. Heathrow expansion has been hailed by some as an opportunity for business and jobs, and I think this has really exposed a big tension between the unions and environment people who want to put environmental objectives at the heart of policy making, and that was what really got the ball rolling with this event, Pam, as we were talking about that tension. And I think it's important that we're not squeamish about having these conversations, but I think if Heathrow expansion is the answer to jobs and prosperity in northwest London, then we really need to think again, and hopefully some ideas will come out of this event this evening. I believe that the unions and the Labour Party are really best placed to lead on a green jobs revolution, because it's us who will always put workers' rights first and to make sure that a carbon neutral future that stops and reverses the damage to our planet is not an abstract peopleless vision, but one that puts economic regeneration and communities at its heart. So what are some of the local levers and points of influence that we can look at? I think too often climate change is perceived to be a national or international issue and solely the responsibility of central government, but there is so much that can be done at a local level. So I just wanted to talk through some of the key decision-making points in the borough and areas of influence. Planning, I think, is a huge lever that Brent Council has. Really, every planning decision should be taken in line with long-term climate and biodiversity goals, because we know what we're building now will determine our climate impact and resilience in decades to come. It's important that we embed not just carbon neutral developments, but I would argue carbon negative requirements in developments, as well as measures to restore and enhance local biodiversity. And I think biodiversity is a really important factor that sometimes gets overlooked in the climate debate. But Brent Council, I think, really has the power to reach out to the type of developers and organisations that we want to work with and cultivate those relationships. For example, the Council could work to bring together a group of green developers and architects that we work on proactively on regeneration projects. This past week, Client Earth actually put over 100 local authorities on notice, including Brent, giving them 8 weeks to explain how they will hit their carbon reduction targets. So I think it's really important that for everyone here that we do keep an eye out for that the report that Brent Council will be coming out with within the next 8 weeks in response to Client Earth's demands. Second area of influence that I think the Council can really be strong on is our leadership and partnership work, so using our soft power. Brent's Council leads the local partnership board with stakeholders right across the public and private sector. We have access to partners right across the voluntary sector, access right into communities. And I think we need to be asking ourselves as a council, what are we demanding of our partners around the table at Brent partnership meetings when it comes to climate change and the environment? Currently, Brent Business Board meetings, the minutes are not published, so it's impossible to know if climate and the environment is actually featuring as part of the agenda. But I would say something like Brent Business Board has an amazing opportunity to initiate change within the business community in Brent. The Localism Act, I think, is a really interesting power that local councils have to enact change. And one initiative that we had in Brent was using the Localism Act to give business rate discounts to employers who became living wage accredited. And this trebled the number of living wage accredited businesses within the first year of the programme. So could we do something similar when it comes to environment and carbon reduction using the Localism Act? And finally, regional and local partnerships. The Council is part of a number of regional bodies, such as West London Alliance and London Councils. I wanted to ask, how many of you here have heard of the West London Economic Prosperity Board? Nobody? Okay. Well, it's a very influential group, working with developers, working with chambers of commerce and the GLA, and it includes leaders from all the West London councils. And surprise, surprise, its members are entirely male. But in its last annual report, when Brent was actually chairing the Economic Prosperity Board, the environment and climate change were mentioned a grand total of 0 times. So also the board has outlined 4 major priorities, and climate change and the environment are not one of them. So I think we all have a role in demanding much more from the democratic structures and centres of power locally, pressing them to be more accountable when it comes to tackling climate change, the climate and environment emergency. I'm running out of time now, but in terms of follow-up from this evening, we know that there's going to be a follow-up meeting on the 8th of October, which I think is a fantastic first start, so I think it's important that as many of us as possible turn up to that. Some ideas that I will just whiz through, if that's all right, Ian, very quickly. We could look to hold a Climate and Environment Commission in Brent, bringing together the private sector, voluntary voluntary partners and members of the community to actually work on developing and delivering a transparent plan on reducing emissions, regenerating nature and building in climate change adaptation. I think we should be lobbying the leader in the cabinet much more to be banging the table at West London Alliance and LGA meetings, making sure that climate and environment are absolutely a priority and that our views are being represented there. I think we need to be demanding more of the local Economic Prosperity Board. I think our council could look much more at scrutinising through our scrutiny committees, looking at what the council and local partners are doing. A business kite mark, working with the Chambers of Commerce and the council to create a package of incentives for businesses to meet the kite mark standards. And I know that through XR we're looking at that as one of the major projects. And also, finally, the council, we've mentioned the climate and environment emergency that was declared in July at Brent Council, but that motion stipulated that the Cabinet has to come back in January with a fully costed plan on how they are going to tackle the climate and environment emergency locally. So we need to make sure that they do. Thank you.